one of the things that we have from Alex to Sudhir. Alex did quite a good discussion, I think, on the whole of the elections, understanding Parliament, the concept. We are struggling with the concept of what we mean by confrontational discussions. It's quite uncomfortable, is what he hinted at. And both of them have already brought in the whole discussion on our ideology. What it is. What is it that the Singaporeans really want? What do we subscribe to as an ideology, etc.? And also without some clarity or in that kind of process thinking, whether we can be even influenced at one time or another to the right, to the left. The Americans are going through this right now. Some find Donald Trump really attractive and some go, oh my goodness, how can he become president? But it's interesting that there is a camp. For me, of course, it will be, oh my goodness, but there is a camp that does find him appealing and interesting. The other part is the very good word that has come from both of them, rehabilitation. We are using it liberally, rehabilitation of political parties, rehabilitation of issues, if there's such a thing, and rehabilitation of the Singaporean as an individual and as a population. I think these are very important things that we ought to look at. And I think in this whole case about alternatives, Alex also talked about it. When we talk about opposition, what is our mental framing? When we talked about alternative policies, what's our mental framing? So these are all some of the spots that have appeared. So anyone, please, like I said, wow, very good, very, very happy. Please throw what you have. Yep.
Hi, my name is Nizam. Just to echo Sudhir's point, I think the point was not one of just shock to learn about the GE results. That transcended into grief. And I were, I think sincerely grieving for the whole weekend. And there was the fear of the future as well, what it means for Singaporeans. Are we sending a perverse signal to the ruling party that this is what Singaporeans really want? So those are real fears, but I think having gone through the grieving process and looking ahead to what it means to us, and then I think this point is also important to MARUAH as a civil society in future. What does it mean for civil society? And then Tharman came. He seems like the, savior for the ruling party. I mean, there were talk about the Tharman effect winning over quite a number of votes for the PAP. He said this. He said that there's still a role for the opposition. There's still a role for civil society going forward, and it's important for the ruling party to listen to civil society. When I put it up on my newsfeed, I get a mixture of reactions. Some people say, yay. Some people say, yeah. The same old rhetoric. And the question is really how far it transcends the entire establishment. We have heard Tharman said it in 2011 before the elections, where it's important for Singapore to have a good opposition. But coming back to civil society, what are your thoughts? I mean, what do people think in this room? Is it more important for civil society to be out there, as Alex put, educating other Singaporeans, to prevent another popcorn democracy? And if you look at some of the structural constraints that will face the opposition even going forward, things like not having an independent electoral commission, things like having a GRC system, the role of media, mass media, and it's important for us to push for the voices like the online citizen to be out there. It's important for civil society to then question some of the rules against alternative media platforms online, how that's sort of tip the field the other way around. So grateful to hear people's thoughts on that.
Right, thank you. We'll take a few views. Civil society and Tharman effect coming from you.
My name is Chong Sanwa. I'm 61 years old, and I believe in honesty. For this year election, I did not vote for PAP. No. I am a die-hard PAP. I'm a die-hard PAP. But after Lee Kuan Yew has passed away, I don't owe anybody anything. Okay? Now, 3 points I did not vote for PAP. One is about the draw the line. I always wish as a young child, or not as a young child, but when Lee Hsien Loong became Prime Minister, I always wish that he will not draw the line, be like his father. I want it honest, that the people vote for him. I pray hard, but it never happened. This election, they draw the line. And number two, why? About this Passover, the Aljunied. I don't like that they take away from the Worker Party the computer system, and it took them 2 years to reinstate it back. It's called very pity, small 小人啊. Very, you're such a giant already. Why still scared of the Worker Party? Only one GRC only, ma. Right? No, cannot, because what about the future the follower of the PAP? They will follow. Cannot. Listen, Prime Minister, listen, must start a good example. Really win the people's heart that all of us are for PAP. And the third one is suing. I don't like. I don't like the two last. He's a small boy. He's very brilliant. I don't like. And when I went into the booth, it's hard for me. I crossed opposition party. You know, it's not easy for me, huh? And this one I have to share. No. This one is Gen Y, huh? So because you are all very confused, why the sweet vote? Yeah. You know, this Gen Y, a perspective from a Gen Y who works overseas. This one I cannot read to you all. I must pass to somebody because it is very, very touching. And even before I vote, I receive this, I still vote opposition. But this Gen Y is really concerned about the situation of PAP. Maybe, dear friends, sentiments on the ground, seems rather weak for PAP. Whoa, sad. Quite worrying. Please share the above message with your children and friends. Let vote wisely. You see, a Gen Y. And this is because he has been overseas. He made a comparison. And I really hope that during this discussion, we have an honest mind what is all this happening to the citizen of Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do think that these voices are important because sometimes we get into a different mode, and the crossover, as you said, from being such a Lee Kuan Yew supporter to moving to voting for opposition, I think is an interesting recap of your own feelings and your own thought processes. So thank you for that.
Singapore.
Yeah, but thank you.
The future of Singapore.
Thank you.
It's very important.
Thank you. But I also would like to say whatever that you shared, please keep it short. Thank you. But and get to what you really wish to. She has already given us some ideological perspectives from her. We have to decode it, but it's there. So over there, please.
My comment is mainly about voter maturity. Maybe Sudhir is probably in a better position to answer that, given what he prefaced just now. Two things. One was that a friend said to me in jest that new citizens will likely vote for the PAP, and my thought was that it's not Singaporeans cannot distinct between government, the country, and then the PAP, right? And then you see that also in when Lee Kuan Yew passed away, right? He was a brilliant prime minister, but he was not God. He was perhaps the founding prime minister, but also just the founding prime minister, right? So, but people went to the parliament to see him and cry and vote and wait in line for 10 hours. Sorry, I didn't sleep. So, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what would be a a path given all the barriers that are given all the barriers like no free media, control, very controlled narrative from the government, very controlled history syllabus. So what could be a way for voters to become more mature in the way they view the election system, in the way they judge politicians and their policies? That would be my question.
Right, thank you. I see many hands. This is what I'm going to do, moderator. I'm going to just hold it for a while, get responses. Those who haven't spoken also said that maybe they have a response, which is fine by me. And we will also ask the respondents not to make their answer very long. So everybody is fair and square here. So would you like to go first, Alex?
First question from Nizam. So civil society, what role going forward? If you look at how states and countries change structurally, any time in history, it's always far more than just political parties driving the change. It's always involved a very large role for civil society. Even up north in Malaysia, for example, you've heard of the Bersih movement, right? You've also now heard of other movements coming to oppose them. But a lot of the contestation has to be by civil society. One of the great imperatives of the People's Action Party government in the last 50 years is to put a dampener on civil society. They know very well the power of civil society. And therefore, I would say very simply the answer is yes, civil society's got to up its game and play a far bigger role in shaping the discourse, in shaping the thoughts and the ideas. And MARUAH is a good example of that. Secondly, the question of from Ms. Chong. I'll just say this very succinctly. If opposition parties appeal to Ms. Chong, they will lose. They'll never win. Never. Why? Because Ms. Chong, and those reasons are totally valid for her, was voting against the PAP. I'm not disputing the validity of that. And she has certainly got a right to her opinion. But it will never be enough to win the vote of the swing voter. For the swing voter, you must give them something to vote for, not to vote against. And that is why a lot of the louder parties perennially get 27%, 30%, 31%. Those are your die-hard people who will vote opposition, not vote for A or B or C, but vote against PAP. And if you keep on this rhetoric, you'll never win. You might as well close shop today and stop wasting money on lost deposits. Thirdly, what path going forward? That's a very difficult question. I think the purpose of having this forum is trying to figure it out, right?
My question was purely on voter maturity.
Okay.
Like
how do we get to voter maturity?
How do you make them see past just voting beyond their wallets?
Okay.
Yes. Voting beyond the wallets, how do you see it? How do you get them?
We'll have one conversation.
Okay, very simple answer. Okay, if you try to design a future, design a party platform with that in mind, forget it, close shop tomorrow. All right? Assume your voter will remain forever immature. Under this condition, how do you win an election?
I'll talk about the media very briefly because I think there are reasons to be pessimistic and to be optimistic as well. I work quite closely with some online media channels, particularly Mothership.sg right now. Generally, I don't think the PAP, has a very open, progressive view of the media. You all know that I'm not optimistic about the PAP on its own accord actually doing much to liberalize the media. And I'm very critical still of the way they come down with lawsuits and other threats, licensing requirements for websites, so on and so forth. All these things at the end of the day actually scare away potential journalists, scare away potential writers. And the climate, after Donald and I published the book called Hard Choices, Challenging the Singapore Consensus, a lot of people said, oh wow, it's great that you can publish such a book in Singapore and it's accepted in your country and all that. But actually, there were so many people, even people within the civil service, who, started basically sort of fear-mongering, right? Oh, what's going to happen to you and Donald now? Donald's career is dead, basically, because of the book that you would publish. So every time, the point I'm trying to make is that every time in the media you have somebody trying to put forth an independent, objective view, there's just so much scaremongering that goes on amongst particular circles that actually then has a chilling effect on media as a whole. And I don't actually see this changing very much. Now, I guess the optimistic view is that, and this gets to the gentleman's point about voter maturity as well, and gets back to my earlier point about the apathetic voter, is that I don't think in Singapore today you can claim anymore, I don't know, or I don't have access. Right? So that's the great thing about the internet over the past 10 years, that so many of us have written so many articles about all sorts of problems within the PAP, but if voters still choose that party, that they're entitled to the choice that they make. But we can no longer say that we don't know, right? So you have, in a sense, bloggers writing about different issues. And I guess the optimistic view then is that the PAP knows this as well, right? That everybody now has free access to information and they still vote for me. So, what's wrong with loosening things a bit more? And this is the positive spin on the landslide that was put to me by some people that, the PAP has such a big mandate that it won't be so desperate anymore, right? Whereas if we cut its mandate to 56%, 55%, it will just become even more desperate and it will crack down even more on people like you, right? On the online media and everything else. So I don't necessarily buy this argument, but there is this suggestion that the landslide actually makes it easier for the ruling party, at least the progressives like Tharman, at least the progressives within the ruling party, to push forth any liberalizing agenda that they might want to, versus if the party only got 55% or 56%. So that's I guess the optimistic view on the media in Singapore. And in terms of voter maturity, I think the only thing that I want to add onto that is that, and I think Alex wrote this in his blog post the day or 2 days after the election. But there is a nightmare scenario for me actually, right? Because we do have apathy. If what I say is true, right? Political apathy, even despite all this information, a ruling party that doesn't have checks and balances, own self, check own self, right? For all intents and purposes, and then the only thing where power corrupts, right? So we're placing implicit faith in a party and individuals to remain as corruption-free as it has for the past 50 years. And this is exactly, I mentioned this before, but this is exactly what you saw happening in a place like Malaysia, right? Where eventually, slowly, institutions erode because human nature is human nature, right? And so there is a nightmare scenario because I don't think we can complain anymore that voters aren't aware and aren't mature. They should be, and if they are still immature, then they only have themselves to blame, right? And then it leads to this potential nightmare scenario where the PAP has a major crisis. Voter maturity is not there, voter awareness is not there, and we don't have a decent opposition to come in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, both. I'm coming round. We have 6 speakers, sorry, I'm going to be very boring now. And I'm going to say, let's get back to the speakers. Like civil society, for example, is a very big topic that I think we have to discuss again closer to the end. As Derek or someone pointed out, Alex, the three questions that we have is the campaign, the results, and where to, what next, etc. I think we need to talk a bit more about the what next, but there are already different parts coming from the first two speakers about the what next. Maybe I'm prejudiced, but I hear a lot about, okay, the party is the party, but what about me? My response, who am I? What is my ideological positioning at 60-something? She has made, Madam here, a very clear distinction. And we also have in the paper that we did, these kinds of tables that show actually what happens when we have this kind of ethnic minority issue. 1980, how many, etc. So astronomically have minority candidates, has there been an increase really because of the GRC from 1980 and 1984 compared to, is for let's say 4 more extra persons, do we really need this huge GRC? It's a point that we really got to look at going forward. And there's another slide, if you could just go back a little bit, sorry, this one. I think it's this one. Sorry, I'm not going to take up. I just wanted this point to be reflected. Yeah, this is, we call it the skewing seat, where the GRC is concerned, PAP share of seats. GRC SMCs before 2006, 2011. I think these type of data is important for us. It's on the website, etc. It's also in the booklets. Am I right? Right at the back, you can buy the papers quite cheaply. $8, I think, or something, so that you can get all these figures. These are research materials shared with the public, sent to the Prime Minister's office, sent to the election department. At every corner, we ask, can we meet for a dialogue? Of course, the dialogue did not really happen, so maybe now things will change. Okay, we will go to the next speaker. Is it okay? Can you all last? I thought of doing the next two, and then I think there's going to be a barrage. I hope there's a barrage of discussion. It's a discussion, right? Okay, some of the highlights that have come up already, and also while I'm doing that, maybe the speakers would like to come here. There's no more PowerPoint, except, sorry, one last one. This is Maruah's homework on electoral boundaries. It's all at the back, and you can see Kaki Bukit. This is the story of how many times Kaki Bukit has moved, and the next slide shows you again the movement, exactly as what Jack has mentioned and as what has Derek mentioned. There's a whole paper there on electoral boundaries, and I think when we mapped it out, it also took us, gave us a shock that the map, it moves extensively, the constituencies. So, okay, we'll shut down on that, thank you. And now we will just ask the speakers to come a bit more forward, and I too, I can shut down, and I would like a chair also right now, tired of standing, if you don't mind. Yeah, so what are the blocks that I am hoping we can talk about? One of the blocks is, thank you, one of the blocks that I think we need to focus a bit more on would be the whole discussion based on civil society. We, the people, civil society, I'm taking it to be at the broadest level. What is it that we want and what is it that we can do? Yeah, I think that's quite important. Whether you are part of an interest group or whether you are just part of a citizenry, I think is quite an important question. And to guide that, the discussions that came from the speakers was already there. What is our mind frame? What is the ideology of us as a people? Is it all dollar, as you were pointing out? Are we just going to go on looking at commodification of our lives. I think that's a big question that I think we have to explore. The second big question that has come up from all the speakers also is the political party, the whole structuring of our political scene. Should we ask these political parties if we have influence to collapse, come together? Should there be a coalition? Should they operate on their own? And then we also struggle with identity of the political parties. Workers' Party is trying very hard, from the discussions that Terry shared towards the end, trying very hard to put themselves up as a party with a difference. Should we encourage that? What should we do? I think these are important questions that we need to look at. The third one that I think is equally important is our institutions. Rafi's shared his volunteer work. There was also one incident that came out in the paper. The collusion of social service sector, administrative units coming into the politics, as in capital P politics. What are we going to do about it? How often does it happen? We hear anecdotes, but are we collating? Are the researchers doing all of these stuff? I think that becomes important. The good news about all this discussion is we can kill the conspiracy theory, right? That's out. I mean, people ask me, are you sure no box was put? Because I became accounting agent this time together with some of the MARUAH members. We wrote to ELD and asked them whether we can be election observers second time round. We asked them and the answer was no. So I said, this time, let's go and volunteer ourselves. It was an interesting experience to become accounting agent, but some of the questions were like, are you sure no box, the boxes, are you sure that... But we have, are you sure that the boxes, no boxes came on the bus, were there people, etc. So we get some really quite way out, and yet some of the papers that we put up together with other groups to the ELD, election department, have seen improvements. One of it is a sampling, to release sampling counting. It has a bit of a downside, but it is better than keeping all the counts right up to the end. So there's some improvement. Polling agents can now sit on the bus and accompany the boxes to the counting center. That's an improvement. This came from agitation, etc., from the last time. So I think that the more engaged we are with processes, the cleaner, the neater, the fairer it will become. Why is it that I was very interested in getting Sudhir to come? Yes, besides being a student. He wrote 3 parts before the election. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. 4 parts. You can read it up. To me, I felt it was very moving, thoughtful, insightful piece about where are we heading as a country, where are we heading as Singaporeans. And for me, after reading that, and then when I saw the results, it's a big drop for me, because we are poising and positioning ourselves for change. What that change means is also another discussion. And so the results have come back. We don't have to belabor that point anymore, that we seem to be very keen on stability, very keen on don't shake my little boat or my apple cart. It's all nicely arranged. I do not want too many things to shake it all up. Yes, I need some opposition to shout a bit here and there. That is why Miss Sylvia Lim said, maybe the public, the Singaporean, doesn't want the Workers' Party to grow any larger. So all these are becoming, I feel, for MARUAH, this discussion has to become what's our reflection, our framing of ourselves. So this is how I would like to wrap up the speakers' discussions. And I would like to hear points of view, etc., from your side, yourselves. What do you all think about the whole thing? And if you have any clarification, then to ask the speakers.
After the 2011, which Catherine Lim calls the watershed elections, I was very fired up. So before that, I was pretty much politically apathetic. But after that, I felt like a change in the scene for Singapore. I had great hopes for this 2015. I think, like many people here, I was devastated by the results. But one thing I wanted to do was that I wanted to be more involved in the political process. So I volunteered as a polling agent for SDP in the Holland Bukit Timah GRC. So what I observed as a polling agent, there were a few things that really puzzled me, and I actually approached the, I think they call it the RO or the residing officer. One thing was serialization. It was the first time I noticed that actually the serial number was both on the counterfoil as well as on the ballot paper. All along I thought it was on one side only, which I think but I'm not going to go further on that. Yeah, but okay. I know the argument. I know the argument for stuffing the ballot paper, but I think the process for polling agents and counting agents following the ballot boxes all the way, it shows that actually there's no possibility of stuffing the ballot boxes. So my question to the RO was that, why is there a need? And then he said there's a need because we want to track but it's only with a court order that you can actually find out who the particular voter is. So okay, I'm happy with that. The other thing that actually offended me was that Vivian Balakrishnan, the Holland Bukit Timah candidate, could actually walk up to the POs or presiding officers and shake their hands and ask for their vote, which is actually a contravention of the code of conduct for candidates. Now, some of the people, the POs, they have not voted yet. They leave it to the last hour before they vote. Now, this is to me very unfair. Okay. So, but I call up my supervisor, SDP, what should I do about it? Is it just, ignore them, they can do whatever they want. As SDP people, candidates, we will not do that. Dr. Chi does not come into the center to ask for vote or canvassing or all that, because I support Dr. Chi because he's a very honorable person. I had a bad impression of him in the 90s, but he's a changed man now. So, yeah. But I don't agree with what Alex Au said about, we should bash the other political party, because the PAP incumbent party will only use that as a point to divide and conquer the opposition parties. Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but I think that opposition can work with PAP, at least within the system, in order for Singapore to proceed, in order for Singapore to progress. I don't believe in confrontational politics, but that's me. Okay. Okay. So
what's the question? We will come to the point.
Two questions for Jack. First, what I said about Dr. Vivian, was it really against the law for him to canvass? The second point I'm trying to recall is that, okay, maybe for Alex, do you think that confrontational politics is the way forward from now on, or can we have what you call cooperative? Maybe cooperative is too strong a word, but at least non-confrontational politics as a possibility for opposition to work together with PAP. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, but can we cut back on the stories and just get to the questions? So Alex has one and Jack has one. Next person, please. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lisa. So I have three quick questions. One of it, I refer to a research done by Cohort.sg. I'm not related to them. So they're an independent research group, and they found through their research, they went to survey about 1,300 over people, and they found that about 70% of those people would vote for the PAP. The interesting thing is, this is very much correlated with the actual results, which was 69.9%, but their research was done 1 month before the elections. So I'm wondering whether elections, the polling, the rallies make any difference at all, and whether it's the campaigning of the everyday rather than the campaigning of that period that made the difference. That's one question. The next question is related to that, which is that I think power is very much entrenched in our institutions, like obviously the PA, the grassroots, and all these other government-related institutions. So how do we even begin, civil service included, how do we even begin to delink the PAP with our civil service and our grassroots? Third question is, but what I mean by delink is for ordinary people to realize what is what came from our civil service versus what came from the PAP as a policy. Third question is about media. So Terry mentioned a bit about the other media outlets, Mothership, 66, and so on. I was wondering whether Terry or other people could elaborate on a bit about funding sources, whether they are truly independent, and whether or not truly independent sources like TOC are going to be starved out, and what the consequences of that might be.
Okay, thank you. We have about 3 questions that can be shared. Yes.
Hi, my name is Pelly Perez. My first question is, Singapore is actually has a lot more in common with large multinational corporations rather than a standard country. And the way it's, in some ways you find there are similarities. So is it really asking too much for a country which is run like, in some ways, like a large corporation to be, to expect it to have the same kind of democratic process and elections like what you expect from traditional countries and typical countries? First question. Next question is, now research has shown that people are risk averse, that when there are problems or issues, economic and so on, they stay with what they know, especially those who have delivered. And well, the PAP has delivered in some ways. So now is a bad time. There's a problem all over. China is facing problems and so on. So isn't it natural for people, especially those who, who are so concerned about the bread and butter, to vote the incumbent? Thank you.
I know I said the other 3. Can we just take this quite quickly, then we come back to the other 3? Yeah? Otherwise it's too long. So all sharp. Yep. Thank you. Sorry.
I'll take Alfred's question first. I'll take them all actually very quickly. Is confrontational politics the way forward from now on? My simple answer, I think Sudhir knows my answer already now. Confrontational politics is unavoidable. It will come whether you choose it or not. My bet is that if we have another 20 years more of PAP, we will have confrontational politics. It's unavoidable. All right? If there's no other way to dislodge the PAP and the PAP is performing badly, what else can you do? Next question. So get used to it, that's all I'm saying. Do rallies make, from Lisa, do rallies make any difference at all? I would say, you can't give a definitive answer. Of course, there are some people who depend on the rallies to make up their mind. But my point is that if you look at other countries' elections, they stretch over months. And which is what I was trying to say, that the opposition parties should be doing the politics through 4 years. If you haven't done your politics through 4 years, I'm sorry, your teacher was telling you, please do your homework every time. Okay, don't burn the midnight oil. It's the same thing. Okay, essentially people have made up their minds, and that kind of answers the other question about Quad SG. All right, I think they reflected it. All right, people did make up their minds. Okay, no, I don't think the rallies are that important. I think the daily politics, which was not done very much during the 4 years, that would be much more important. How to delink the PAP from grassroots? I'll leave that for the other. And Patty's question, okay, so A and B. All right. Is it too much to expect democracy in a small little state? No, I don't think it's too much. I know, even in MNCs there is democracy. There's such things as activist shareholders. Okay. Are we risk averse? This is a very interesting. I thank Derek for pointing this out. The mandatory voting makes a lot of difference, actually. All right. I think what we are actually witnessing is a situation where, and he's right. The Singapore voter is not a lot different. We are voting mostly by self-interest. Where I might disagree with him is that we are voting mostly by our perception of our self-interest. What is the objective self-interest? And that's very, very arguable. And I think the average voter here is going to just merely take his perception of self-interest and vote. And the average person on this earth is risk-averse. If that shows up in our voting, when you compel everybody to vote, that's the most natural thing.
Okay, thanks. So I see whether can I also try to answer the most. I also agree that campaigning or the rallies, right, doesn't really affect much. On the basis that you have so much turnout in the Workers' Party, but yet you also see a turnout. And in fact, if anything shows, right, what you see in the rallies is a consolidation of all the opposition supporters. The 30% actually is there already. So it doesn't really show much. And furthermore, now with internet access, etc., people can jolly well just watch the rally at their home, at the comfort of their own home. So the rally size doesn't really matter. And how is like burning midnight oil? How can you expect to understand everything about politics just like through the 9 days of campaigning? Not possible. Then the linking of the grassroots, right? I would say it's very hard to do that. And that's why civil society needs to come in, NGO need to come in, real NGO, not go. Government organized, not government organization, and civil society has to come in and have solely pull the people to support organizations that are not government linked. But that takes a very big, great effort. But that is the only way forward, because there's no way who's going to be forward. And then for the media side, right? You see, for us, independent media, I would say no more alternative. Independent, okay, remember that. Okay, independent media. For fundings, we only get from donations. Advertising, yes, we do get, but it's very hard for us to operate on such finances and expected to reach. People tell me, say, oh, you're not like reporting like One Mothership or even Straits Times or Today doing, hey, come on, like you look at the budget that we have, right? We are spending like 3K for the general election. How much money did they throw in? So it's unfair to expect the same for us. And moving forward, if we are deprived of our fundings and stuff, well, you would see the same situation that you have in migrants issue. That you have Gongo saying that, oh, all this are being taken care of, or actually in actual fact it's not. So alternative media is also independent. Sorry, I also saying this. Independent media would also be slowly be faded away. Like people like us, if we choose not to continue on just based on passion, right? You would have this problem that you have sanctioned, licensed independent media operating with the good wishes of the government. Then the run like a large corporation. If Singapore is run really like a large corporation, actually I would jolly well support that, because ministers that fail to meet their KPI will sack. Because we run like a large corporation, but yet some things we pick and choose. There are some times where we run like a large corporation, but sometimes we choose not to run like a large corporation. If people fail to perform right, let's sack him. But we don't do that. Then about people voting for the incumbent in times of crisis, in fact, I think they maximize use on this. If you flip through the newspaper, right, surprisingly, when you have the PAP candidates or opposition candidates, then in line, right, you see chaos in Thailand, chaos in Malaysia. It's like telling you, hey, you have to be careful who you vote for, and that really affected people. I think I answered all.
Jack, right? Oh, sorry.
I'll just
Everyone has to be short, yeah? We got more questions, yeah?
I'd like to just answer the part on what's that, delinking institutions. I think in the coming years, with more foreign manpower into Singapore, without fail, I think we will see a comeback of the unions, the labour unions. Perhaps that could be a spark to a new wave of activism. Yeah, I mean, you start with your day-to-day affairs, be aware of what's happening to you as a worker, as an employee, yeah, and see around you, that kind of thing, people who are actually facing the same problems. Yeah, I think that could be probably the start. Well, of course, I'm not talking about NTUC. I'm not talking about NTUC. Well, look at it this way. The last 5 years, how many strikes have you seen? Well, of course, those are not Singaporeans. We have seen a riot, big one, and emotions do get what do you call it? Yeah. And they will come together and eventually, like Alex mentioned, 20 years, if PAP is still in power, and perhaps confrontation may happen, not just in the political sphere, but also in the public sphere. And this is where the role of civil society yeah, will play a major part. Whether or not we become the instigators, directly or indirectly, well, I don't think that. I mean, that's reality, is it? I mean, it depends on which lens you look at. Or we become the peacemakers in that sense.
Was what Vivian Balakrishnan did unlawful? I don't know what he did exactly. I think the person who answered the question said he shook hands with some people and said, ask for their vote. Okay. So what the law says is that canvassing is unlawful on both polling off day and polling day. And canvassing means trying to persuade someone to either vote or not vote in a matter. So technically, I suppose, yes, that would. If it is, yeah, if he actually said, please vote for me, then technically he's not supposed to say that. He can actually be there though, because candidates are allowed to be at the polling station.
I just want to add in on that point. If that, I'm not saying it happened or it didn't happen, it should be written up. There's a form, it should be written up and submitted to the ELT. Then the next line of actions can take place. Otherwise, it just becomes the chat. So it also becomes what we were talking about. What is my involvement? If my involvement is for better systems, fair, then we have to do the work that we saw.
See, the problem is that I was representative of SDP. If what I say that, he said this, the PAP will use that against me and say that you are saying this because of
honestly, writing document the polling station you will have, polling district, polling station, time that you came in, what exactly you heard, and preferably if you knew the names of the POs, also what specific name of the POs were involved. Typically the POs are supposed to be living around there, but document it before you forget. It's just been about a week already. Write down exactly what time you came with, who else was there, who was the PO on duty, and specifically what you recall. Write it down before you forget. Okay, as you say, make a formal report to the returning officer.
This was one of the concluding things we wanted to put in, that if you have those who have been polling and counting agents, even the last time, 2011, there were many stories, and we kept saying, put it down in writing. So the same scenario you mapped, that your party may not be really supportive of what you wish to put down in writing, then it becomes an internal matter. And I think it's a waste. If the party is going to dictate what is fair or not fair, I think we are all not going to improve. That's MARUAH's take. We have to decide if this system is not correct. If it really happened, we have to rectify it. Who else is going to do it? Political party? Oh, that's another day's story. I have a vested interest. I'm a political party, but as a citizen, my interest is very clear. Free and fair elections. I'm not going to let any ruling party tell me what can be directed as an inquiry or what cannot be an inquiry. Then what are we there for? To just support a political party so we can become quite blind to our own interests. So we got to be careful. It's your own something that you have to figure out. Yeah? Okay, we will not talk about this anymore because I also think it's Jack is just giving a legal perspective. Yeah, am I right? Or you want to add on? Yes.
No. I was just going to say that maybe this is a role that some NGO would like to do in the future. I'm not saying it's MARUAH, but there's this. Yeah, well, no, I mean, there's this issue that because I had this conversation with a friend on Facebook, and he said, why don't you volunteer with one of the political parties to be a scrutineer and to go down and observe the things? And I said, well, I don't really feel that I ought to be openly partisan as an academic and so on. Then he said something which is very interesting, which was that, but then what you're trying to do is really to ensure the integrity of the process. And I thought maybe there ought to be a way in which people who don't actually openly want to sort of say, I am a supporter of an X party, to come forward and do this role. And maybe that's where an NGO can come in and say, we'll call for volunteers, and then we will dispatch them to political parties who want to have volunteers, and these volunteers will maybe wear a badge to say, independent volunteer, but
but acting on behalf of your party, because that's the only way you can get into the conversation. And maybe a lot of people would actually be more comfortable volunteering in that respect to say, I'm not actually supporting a political party, I'm here under the auspices of an NGO, but I'm here to scrutinize the process to make sure it's fair. And maybe that would be a good idea on a way to run it.
Because I want to conclude on this point so that I think what Jack has brought up is very important, but it is also something that MARUAH Election Watch we need to do, because I went as a counting agent to Workers' Party and I told Workers' Party I'm here because we can't get in, and I didn't wear party colours, nothing, because I am there as a scrutineer. For counting agent, you don't have to. So I only went for counting agent. And I think this is a process we need to bring in, because if I'm Workers' Party or PAP or any of the parties, I have a vested interest, not wrong at all. But we just want a clean, free and fair system. So whatever Jack has said, I think we have to do it, and it will be perhaps another pool of people who will not be ardent political party supporters, which is also equally fine. You know, yeah. Do you want to add on, and then Derek, and then we go to the next round?
Just two very quick points on delinking the civil service and the PAP and institutions. I think it will only really happen when the PAP loses power. Then people can see with their own eyes that the country still runs, with a different party in power. And if you think about the whole of Asia, the countries that have elections, so leave out places like China and Vietnam, the whole of Asia, there are only two countries that have never had a change of power: Malaysia and Singapore. And probably in the next few years, Malaysia will have a change of power. Then Singapore will be the only country left. And I think societies actually need to see that transition and see the country surviving past the original party for them to actually de-link that. Second point on media, I think that there's the eternal struggle for any media outlet in Singapore is the market is too small. So I think all the independent media sites face a question of financial sustainability. There are tons of us.
Actually, it depends. Okay.
So at the end of the day, each has its own way of trying to attract eyeballs in the new media age that we're in, and I think there'll be some attrition, and we'll be left with one or two that are actually sustainable, and others that continue to rely on donations to survive. It's an unfortunate situation in many ways, I think, because we don't have much diversity. But to get to that young lady's point about funding and funding sources and independence and things like that, there's no media outlet in the world that is, in my opinion, completely free from interference from their funding sources. So whoever their investors are, there will always be some either concerted censorship in some cases, or huge self-censorship on the parts of editors and writers, not to piss off the people who pay the bills. So it afflicts every media channel all over the world, traditional and new media. I think the only thing a reader can do is just to be fully aware when you're reading something or watching something, who actually funds that outlet. That's the only way to be aware as a citizen.
Okay, I've got a few quick responses. Some directed to Alex about he's quite certain and adamant that confrontational politics will be something that we will have to deal with in the future. I do not think that that is the case. The very fact of the matter is that WP positioned itself very deliberately as being in the moderate ground. And whatever you want to say, the fact of the matter is that they've got 6 MPs elect, all right? Whether they won the electoral divisions by 1 vote, or, as in the case of Arjuna GRC, by more than 2,600 votes, is immaterial. What is material is the seats that you win. That's the most important point. And the other point related to this is, I talked about people voting out of self-interest, and Alex said that it could be a perception of self-interest. With respect, I think that is a bit condescending. I mean, we all know, people will know for themselves how they define their own self-interest. And it cannot purely be on the basis of material concerns, monetary concerns. It could be religious concerns, whatever it is entirely up to them. Their definition of what is in their self-interest. And the other point about the WP, despite a more than 1 year vigorous onslaught by the PAP on the AHP, TC, WP still held alternate GRC. To me, that is very, very different.
Very victim.
Well,
very victim.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether it's a weak team or a team comprising with horses with 3 legs or whatever. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that they won with more than 2,600 votes, and their vote share dropped far less than the national swing. That's the most important point. And how did they do it? They did it not on the basis of what Alex stated in his main presentation, where he emphasized so much on policies, manifestos, and all that. I've written 2 books on general elections. The 1997 general election and the 2011 general election. I'm really fed up reading about manifestos and policies and all that. And in this general election, I will be very honest with you, I did not read up on any of those manifestos, because in the ultimate analysis, they did not count. What did count for the WP MPs? And I'll tell you this categorically, because this is my own research on the ground. They still retain the seats. Why? Because of the personal connection with the constituents. I can tell you that many Aljunied constituents said that they saw WP MPs in Aljunied GRC more often than they did the predecessor PAP MPs. So, and this also answers the next question. What is the responsibility of an MP? To me, the responsibility of the MP is a fiduciary responsibility, is a fiduciary duty to his constituents. It is not to deliver Churchillian-like speeches in Parliament, okay? It is to serve the needs of the constituents and to have that personal connection, the human touch with the constituents. Now, let me see if there's any. Oh yeah, just two points. One on TOC. Terry, you'll be very glad to know that I did find TOC an excellent resource, and you got 4 references in the index of my 2011 book. Unfortunately, I will tell you honestly, because I tend to be faithful to the truth, that it is not just me, but other people have found that your website has become, to put it bluntly, more extreme over the last year. I mean, carrying people with the bylines, Mars Crusader, GUI, I mean, all these anonymous individuals. I understand that you need to generate content for your website, but it doesn't add credibility if you do not put a real identity to the name. Maybe you should pay me and I'll do all these pieces for you. Okay, and the last point I want to raise is about rallies, because rallies is a very, very important thing. We need to be very nuanced about this. I, myself, in this election, decided that I needed to see firsthand what was going to be the size of the rally at Aljunied in the Serangoon Stadium on the 8th of September. So I went there actually, so kiasu, I went there 2.5 hours early. I was basically the first person there, got to the highest point and see people starting to gravitate. And I went to the same rally in Aljunied 4 years earlier, and I can tell you that there was a difference. Already a question mark was raised in my mind. You know what the question mark was? The rally on 8th of September this year at Aljunied, Serangoon Stadium, I calculated possibly about 35,000 individuals. But back at the last rally in Aljunied, 2011, you know how much I calculated? 50,000. 50. And how was the calculation done? Because of more than 15,000 in the outside perimeter fence looking in, whereas I could see gaps within. So the thing is that you can actually determine some of these things through rallies, but you need to have an observant eye and you need to have experience of what to look out for. That's all I would say. Thank you.
Wait now, the speakers want to respond. Short.
I think on your point about politics being very local, I actually totally agree with you. I think Terry and I had this conversation 3 days ago, and I was basically saying the same thing, right? If anybody watched Sylvia, she was there in the coffee shops 2 mornings a week for the last 4 years, right? And that is true. What I was talking about, party ideologies, is that in order to counteract this tendency of people to homogenize all your opposition parties into one and the same thing as the opposition. And when you want to try to distinguish yourself from the competitor brand, that's what you have to do, brand values. And brand values, in my view, have to be developed in terms of stating very clearly your stand on certain issues. That is the way you start a conversation, and that's the way you distinguish yourself from other parties. And that is how you begin to free yourself from all the shenanigans of the other party that has the changes of a Secretary General every other month or so. But yet, that does not absolve the party from doing exactly what Derek has said, which is that local politics. That, I absolutely agree. That is what kept WP safe.
I also just want to add one small bit. Is there something really wrong with confrontational politics? Right? I think these are issues we have to start dealing with or confronting ourselves, right? What kind of confrontational politics will we find acceptable? All these are going to be issues. Hang on. Right, we have the last page of questions now. Yes, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll take it all at one go. Short, sharp, and storytelling, which we all have many stories. Maybe to a little bit more minimum, right? Thank you. Sorry to be so rude to you all.
Hi, I'm Anis. I just turned 23, so I just voted. My question is referring to Rafi. In accordance to our labor unions, I mean, historically Singapore did have labor unions and many different colorful history that has been erased. So my question is, how do you, to the whole panel, do you imagine that labor unions will come back? Because I mean, we all know that NTUC is a farce. It is not even a union, to be honest. But how would you imagine it for unions to come back?
Okay, thank you. Next, please, you got to come here. The wire is not so long. So whoever first. Yep.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Onyata, and I speak as a concerned citizen, particularly also as a mother of 5 and an educator at heart. Yes, I had to say that because the devastation came from the fact that I voted for my kids' future and it didn't happen. I came here not looking for answers because I think that's impossible. I came here for relief and it's happening. It's happening for those who needed healing. It's not Alcoholic Anonymous. It's I labeled it as VMA, the Vocal Minority Anonymous. So I wanted to ask, thanks. I wanted to ask this question only because I was pushed to see the kind of patterns that were going on, not true pattern, the kind of patterns that were going on my Facebook with the kind of responses I was getting from my students. So I have to tell the short story. There are 3 kinds of students that I had post-elections. One, the hubristic. Yeah. Very, very quick. The hubristic, very arrogant, white-wearing, came onto my Facebook when I never rained on his parade. And he said, I was talking about how expensive, what was that? Movie tickets were, and how, I was lamenting how with 5 kids, if I had to take them to the movies, it's very expensive. He came on and says, why don't we compare cost of movie tickets all around the world and see whether Singapore is taking care of its people. So I was very offended by that. You know what kind of an arrogant fool you are, so I didn't engage. Second one came in a private message. Much more finesse. ex-student as well. Can you check my maths? I'm not a maths teacher. And so I said, and he gave me all these statistics, very interesting. You would like the stats actually. And I said, what's the point? I'm really not a maths teacher. And he said, no, Cher, the people need hope. If one person from the vocal minority, that's us, speaks to one person from the silent majority, the tables will turn, and he gave me a 60% number there. And he says, there is hope, Cher. So I apologized to him and I said, I really hope somebody looks at your stats because I can't be an irresponsible educator that way. So I call that the agent of hope. The third one was very optimistic. I went to visit her mom at hospital and she said, Cher, don't be so devastated. The next GE, we're at the polls, there is hope. So here's my question. The whole story finished already, okay? Okay, here's my question. This very future that we're talking about, these kids, our kids, the students in my schools, they are the future electorate. Yes? What do you think? And again, I'm fine if no answers are going to come up because, this should be a dialogue. It's a thinking thing. What is the role of the educator in teaching democracy? Okay? I think it's a big question to ask. You want a level playing field, we've got to start from there. I can do my part with my 5 kids. I swear I can. But 5 is not going to make a change. But then I want to also bring up something Alex had said. He had this thing, when I function as an educator, he flashed this thing on questions. Not enough questions being asked. Yeah, 8, and then I remember there's 350. I'm like, such a big gap. And that for me is going to be my start. That I'm going to encourage people to start asking questions. Because in the classroom, it's always about us giving them answers. But I think we should start hearing these questions. I don't know what's your answer to this, and I'm fine if there isn't one, but let's start thinking about that. Thank you.
First question, right? What's the union? Yeah, sorry. People who is from there, could you please? And then yourself, you need to come up. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Chi Siang, and I'm one of these future electorate asking questions, as the previous question said. So lately, there's been a lot of debate in the news about whether the new normal that we thought that we saw in 2011 has really persisted into 2015, or whether it was just an electoral anomaly over a long history where the voters of Singapore have been apathetic. I would just like to ask the panel, do you think the new normal is still around, or do you think it's just an anomaly? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi.
Sounds like a repeat of what you have said, but never mind.
Hi, my name is Daniel, and I'd like to declare first that I'm quite closely involved with one of the parties in the scene, right, but not with the establishment. Okay, so I really have 2 questions. So what I understand now is this. You want to make all these changes, the dealing, the privilege and all that, you got to seize power. And that we know, we got to be realistic about that. But the question I have for the panel, particularly for Alex and as well as Derek, is, first question, what's an alternative party going to do now? Facing such an overwhelming establishment with financial resources, with human resources, media resources, what is an alternative party going to do to get the middle ground voters in order to win seats? That's the first thing. That's the key question, I think. How are we going to get the middle ground voters? It doesn't matter whether the support base is all excited. We go to the rally, everyone's screaming and shouting and like a party. It's the people in the HDB blocks who are busy with their families, who are busy with their kids, who are busy thinking about, if they're going to get a next date with someone. Those are the ones those are the votes that we need to win. So the question is, how are we going to win that? And I guess the second question is, now that the PAP has had such a strong mandate, 70%, what's the next 10, 15, 20 years, what's the next 3-4 elections going to be like for the scene? Are we going to see a gradual drop of 5% each time? Because quite seriously, even when their vote was at 60%, we only won one GRC. So does that mean that we're going to need to see a drop of their popular vote down to 50% before we actually see some serious gains? Now, of course, let's not have gains for the sake of gains. Let's put some credible alternatives in there. But the question is, what do the panel see as the trend going forward? 5% drop, or are we going to see something more drastic?
Looks like there are some political party strategies that are coming up as questions. Very interesting. Okay, over here, please. They do not want to be on camera.
So we should close handphone cameras if people don't mind.
No handphone cameras too. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So my question is actually a follow-up to your comments, Derek. And first of all, thank you to all the panelists for your comments and insightful sharing. So Derek, you mentioned that WP retained its seats because of the personal interactions with residents. Does that put us in a catch-22 position going forward then? Because so they had the opportunity to serve residents because they were elected. And if you are not elected, you presumably would not have the swell of volunteers coming forward to serve. I think a lot of us have been, I'm a social entrepreneur. I know how the level of commitment needed to serve, whether it's in the non-political arena or in the political arena, the level of commitment required is very, very high. And if you have churn, it increases. There is effectively a management tax, right, on the parties. That's something that people don't really talk about, but it's there. So, given your comments, which I agree with, would it basically point to, would it lend weight to a status quo situation then, short of a black swan event, i.e., parties and even for WP outside the constituencies in which it has already built up their presence, does it mean that it's that much harder for them to have the opportunity to show that they care and show that they can? Thank you.
My name is Sunny. Thank you very much for all the presentation. I'll make this as quickly as possible. Firstly, Derek, right? I'm an alternate voter, and your observation based on the stadium, Serangoon Stadium rally, I think there's possibly two more factors that's contributing to the less number of people. One is I think SDP has actually begun to have an attraction because of Dr. Chi. And secondly, also because of the first Hougang rally, which has attracted a lot of people. So they've sort of, okay, I've heard what I needed to hear, and therefore, maybe they do not want to go to too many rallies. Now, the other important point that I think I want to raise is in terms of traditional media, right? Although they do have, they are featuring opposition party, but we need to analyze the content because for example, I was very shocked when what they feature on Dr. Chi was the fact when he was saying that, oh, the PP will call me a liar or a psychopath and all that, and they keep repeating that over and over again on air. And I thought, that wasn't something very substantial. And the SG50 narratives, I think it's also very important to include, the underprivileged that's still in existence, and as well as, for instance, the story of the losses that GIC and Temasek has, also lost in the last couple of years. And I think it's interesting that TOC also highlighted a lot of stories of Gertai and all that, Maliki, campaigning on the road and all that, and Vivian, passing through the cooling off day. But on the other hand, when WP has this Optimus Prime truck, right, what happened? They came straight on the spot and asked him to remove those things because it went viral on social media. So, and I think maybe one last point, right? During the political debates, we have the head of all the parties, but we don't have the Prime Minister representing the PAP. So I thought that was like rather weird. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. No one else, so we'll start from this side. You don't have to feel compelled that you have to take every question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Whatever is dropped, I'll try and remember.
Let me address points raised by Daniel. I've already stated this shortly after the election results that the political parties in Singapore, and I hate to use the term opposition parties because we also now must move in terms of what is the general practice in other jurisdictions. And in other jurisdictions, it is, in the UK, it's called Labour Party and Conservative. We must call it now, in Singapore, PAP and WP. Sorry about the other parties, but I've been that way all the time with the rest. And I have been proven to be absolutely correct. I was the one who said, just before the 2011 general election, that the party, the opposition party that gets the most parliamentary seats, whether it's a combination of fully elected MPs or NC MPs, should never ever sit down with those other what I call minor parties. Okay, so now I would, and you know, the term arrogance has been raised. The arrogance derives from the minor parties thinking that they are on the same level as the WP. That is exactly the case, all right? So that's where the real arrogance is and not WP's arrogance. WP, and it was written in my book, I repeated it in my book. Unfortunately, WP initially was following my prescription until, because when they announced the 10 electoral divisions, then somehow they had a change of heart. They said, maybe we should be a bit diplomatic and sit down with these people, otherwise they'll cry till, I don't know, the cows come home, whatever it is. So that to me was a bit of a mistake. All right, the other point I like to raise, which actually, strangely enough, was never raised at all in the last 4 hours, is that, remember this point. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said that he expected the voters of Aljunied to repent, remember? Okay. You would see to me that they did not repent. I think on the basis of the results. Now it'll be interesting to see whether over the next 5 years, because I predict it'll be this parliamentary term will go right to its limit to 2020. I don't think it's going to be 2019 because they don't want to give Raffles too much prominence because of another person, you know. So I think it'll go up to 2020, and I suggest that nationally there will be some repentance on the part of voters on how the voting occurred this time round. The lady just now mentioned about Black Swan event. You know, I'm very pedantic as a scholar. The fact of the matter is that by its very nature, a Black Swan event can never be predicted. You do not know what it is, so I can't even answer that question. And the last point, what was the last point? Oh yes, the point about the personal touch, the personal connection with voters and all that is not merely an Aljunied GRC phenomenon. Mr. Cham Song did it for 27 years. Let's face it, he didn't have great policies to debate in Parliament, but he had that personal connection with the voters of Potong Pasir, in the same way that for 20 years Mr. Lau had that personal connection with the voters of Hao Kang, and he has attempted to replicate it through his entire 5-member team in Aljunied. So that's how you do it. And the way that I believe WP can expand is through the periphery of its existing constituencies. It has to be done slow and steady. I wrote a piece just before the election saying that, you know, the moment you put on the blue WP t-shirt, your morale goes up very high because you know the possibility of winning is very strong. It's not the same with putting on the t-shirt of some of the other parties. And this is what is happening, that WP tends to take the bulk of volunteers, the bulk of because it's human nature. If you can spot some party or some organization that's likely to be the winner, you will sweep up most of the help. That's how it goes.
Yeah, sorry. Can I go to Chair? I didn't get it. Oh, sorry. Aniata. Yeah. Just very quickly, I would say media literacy and critical thinking skills, critical reading, critical thinking skills, which I believe, when I talk to the younger people, they are getting a lot more of it than we did when we were in school. I mean, Miss Marty's class aside. Because there are a lot more alternative histories and narratives that are emerging. So I think as long as young people have the intellectual curiosity and critical faculties to distinguish who is telling them what, I think we'll be fine as a society.
Just a very, very brief response, but comment on what Aniata said. I don't teach civics, but I teach law. But what I do try and tell students is, number one, democracy is not not majority rules. It is majority rules, but it has to come with it a conception of the protection of the rights of minorities, right? So it's not just, it's just whatever the majority wants. That's not how democracy is really, I think, supposed to work. The second thing is, it's a representative democracy. But representative democracy doesn't mean the only time you participate is once in 5 years and you drop a piece of paper into a box, right? In between, you're supposed to be engaged, you're supposed to ask questions and to try to be interested in what is happening around you. So I suppose these are some of the messages that I'm trying to get out.
The first time voter, sorry, I didn't catch your name. Yeah, okay, on labour movement, how can that happen? Personally, if you ask me, I mean, I'm not going to organize one. But I think associations, I mean, the whole idea of being involved, I think, is the first start. Like it or not, today's workforce is very different. Yeah, very connected, yet very detached. Practically everybody sends emails, sends messages to everybody else, but perhaps will not even greet one another at the canteen. I think that there will be a different kind of alignment in the future within the employment sector. And how do I put it? When the issue is big enough, is purposeful enough, it will spark. It will spark. I think, yeah. I don't know whether it's the mall or not. Yeah. Okay, on Workers' Party, I think we cannot neglect the fact. That PAP sent their weakest team ever for any GRC ever in the course of elections. And if to really make it, there is such a big win, such a big great thing for Workers' Party Aljunied, I think it is not, seriously. I mean, if we just look at the micro level, Sylvia and Chen Chamau, for those who have the information, didn't do too well. Well, I guess you're right about the important thing is they secured the 6 seats. Yeah? But to say that their party branding is really the catch factor for voters, I'm not so sure yet. Yeah.
I'll try to answer.
I'm going to just say everything has to be shorter.
Okay.
The first person will take the longest, always. So sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Labour union, the thing is, right, it's really hard to register something that's against the government narrative. I think Jonathan has tried to organize something that is something of this nature, of civil society, association, etc. But ACRA has denied him of the thing. So and it's no point organizing something that does not have an entity, because you cannot collect fees, you cannot collect whatever not. So we have to start from civil society as a whole first before you bring that forward. Because touching on what Daniel mentioned, political parties can actually reach on to this idea and try to push for something, which is to collect member fees for the unions, etc. And that can be a source of income. and push voting. I personally feel that.
Banned straight away.
Yeah, true. Okay, but that's the way. What's the role of the educator in like teaching democracy? I actually can use this to touch on what Derek mentioned. See, the thing is, right, a lot of the people that you say as the nominals, right, are academics, educators. I know them personally. The thing is, educators, academics. Academics, yeah. So the thing is, right, the moment, in fact, I think I have some instance in this general election where the moment the name appears there, the next day you'll receive a call from their school authorities saying that why are you writing on this media? Yeah, and no, please, anyone would say that people are not credible because they're not using a byline are not understanding the sense of fear or the reality of fear that happens in Singapore. That anyone who depends on the government or government-linked companies for livelihood would not be affected by voicing against government policy. That's like lying to yourself, or they are not standing in that position at all to begin with. So don't let me hear that again. Moving on, I think educators can take a part in the thing, but I think to a certain extent, before being called to the office, and I would like to bring up one issue. You know the Charlie Chan Hock Chai, right? The Charlie Chan Hock. Why wasn't the school? Why was the book not banned? Instead, was just simply withdraw the funds. You should tell everyone, the educators especially, do not use this book as a reference. It's not to say that this book cannot be read. You can still read, but do not use this as a reference to teach the kids. I think that was the one step. Okay, drop of most alternative parties and the catch-22 thing, right? I think end of the day it sums up to the back the thing. If you have no money to sustain the political figures, I think like Dr. Chi, etc., right? How can you go down to do that unless you open the mama shop at the constituency? Then every time the voters come in and you can guide with them. If not, it's very hard if you are trying to link up with do this political stuff on a daily basis and yet maintain a certain standard of living. It's possible. So I think better open a mama shop at that place. Yeah.
Well, we now know that the new normal was a figment of our imagination. Right? I think that much we have a consensus. Right? Okay. We are back to where Singapore has always been. All right. And my sense is that the last election result in 2011 was very strongly influenced by a protest element, a protest vote element. But I do agree with Derek. I think people were so shocked by 70% that more likely than not it will swing back. Not very strongly, I think, unless something happens we don't know. But it's probably, this is going to be a kind of a high water mark for a while now. The question from Daniel, one of the questions was, what's going to happen in the next 3-4 years? Well, I think the interesting story that's going to happen in the next 3-4 years, watch within the PAP. They're going to start having a succession issue. They're going to have, but this is the first time we're going to have a succession to a prime minister without another member of the Lee family in the cabinet. So this is new terrain. All right, we're talking about real succession here. Okay, so what's going to happen? What are the situation? Sorry. So when Goh Chok Tong came in, Lee said no was already in. All right, so it's not quite the same. That'll be very interesting to watch. It may create tensions within the PAP. Like what's happened in UMNO over the last 20 years, right? So that's worth watching. Now, how do parties win the middle ground? Daniel's other question. Where's Daniel? How do parties win the middle ground when they have no representation? It's the same as the catch-22 question from the lady with the sunglasses. Okay. And that's my point. Yeah, it's very hard for you to do local politics. I mean, you could. I mean, nothing's stopping you from sitting in a coffee shop every morning. But hell, you've got a job, right? Okay, that's one of my points. I mean, that you are going to get people who you don't know you personally, something to vote for. And so I think I still stand that the party's ideological stand has to make a difference. That is your way to open the door to reach out to people who don't know you on a personal level, for whom you have no way to build a personal relationship. When you get elected, yes, that's how you cement your relationship with your voters. But to get there, to open the door in the first place, you've got to have a message, right? Right, and so just to the very last point from the lady who is the educator, Anietta. What do we do for your next generation? I think one of the most important things to teach them history and literature. The very two subjects that we in our pragmatic society think is not important. But I think we have fallen into this self-delusion that there's some kind of manifest destiny, that there shall always be progress if only so and so is in charge. All right? And one of the best ways to undermine this delusion of manifest destiny is to say, look at history. Look at the way, all right, the powerful have corrupted themselves. Look at the way the losers became the voices of truth. And look at the way complacent societies eventually just fell asleep and lost the race.
Obama to be the Prime Minister, we must be the one to help the PAP.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We talked about funding earlier. I have to confess that MARUAH, I think, is really poor, especially after all the changes, and therefore we do not have really anything to give our wonderful speakers who have given us 4 hours of their time. Can we give because we are really, we are bumped out, there's no money now. So it doesn't only affect TOC, they know our story, and this is what I mean. I'm wrapping up as fast as I can. We talked about many things, but for us the interest is the situation of the political parties, the situation of us trying to change institutions, I think is going to become even more important. Our observation, our narratives, our forming groups. So MARUAH has got a MARUAH Election Watch, and we have already had indirect conversations with TOC that we want to have in October a proper discussion on institution. It's going to be tough, but it has to be done. For example, I'm just saying, so those who are interested, please let us know. And at the back, we have our t-shirts, we have our election report, etc. But all of them are friends, but I just wanted to end on a small note about Sudhir, not because we are both like in a mutual admiration club. Right? He was with Saints Gazette. Oops, I shouldn't have mentioned it. And we started it with an important point. It's the voice of the students. It has to be, you have to let it fly, you have to let it grow and all the exciting stuff. And there was exciting stuff until one of the reports was about the school principal, right? But that was the agreement that I had with the principal. And then there was major hauling in of the students, and he was in front, right? And the principal is the principal. I am the authority. What objective was that? No, I don't know what objective you're talking about and all that. And as he was talking, I felt that, and of course, I had already left the school, so it was even tougher to influence quite a number of things. But what I'm saying is, it's very similar, the situations that we face. What we are willing to take as authority and authoritarianism. And what is our negotiation and intervention in that, I think, are the challenges we are going to face. I don't think more and more of us in Singapore are going to put up with really BS in the system. I don't think so.
right? We are going to get upset. We are going to ask questions. Maybe it will take, like you said, maybe another 2 generations. So a bigger round of applause for speakers and for to you for lasting so long.